let's bring out our European green champions. Alexander Vlaskamp, if you could join me on stage, the CEO of MAN Truck and Bus, and Leonhard Birnbaum, CEO of E.ON, and also Eurelectric president. So thanks for joining me on stage. And we agreed, because these things are always pre-prepared, pre-agreed, that I would ask you a question each and that you have a couple of minutes to answer, and then we try to have a proper discussion, right? So I'd like to start with our guest of the evening, Leonhard Birnbaum. We're really delighted to have you with us today as a leading voice and also crucial partner for the auto industry in the e-mobility transformation. I think it's fair to say that E.ON Group is one of Europe's largest operations, or operators, I should say, of energy networks and energy infrastructure, serving around 48 million customers. That's private and business, I suppose. And you operate 1.6 million kilometers of energy networks. That's cycling the Earth 40 times. That's pretty impressive. You're also president of Eurelectric, unparalleled challenges, I would say, also for the energy industry. So I'm getting to my question now. Europe aims to spearhead the transition to climate neutrality, but how do we ensure that successful business models can thrive in Europe and that European champions drive the green transition globally? Leonhard.
Maybe I start with the fact that we have created some champions in my industry already. So if you look on the renewable side, with Iberdrola, EDPR, RWE, we have probably 3 of the top 5 leading renewable players in the world. Myself, I'm probably one of the largest distribution system operators in the world, for sure in Europe, at least privately owned, for sure, I qualify. And I'm probably the one that has connected more renewables to his grid than anybody else on the planet. So last October we had 1 million connections, renewable connections. I've added last year 400,000. So we are adding like 2,500 connections a day. And so by that we are probably now already world class in really running systems that are completely different from anything we had 10 years ago anywhere on the planet. So in that sense, we have created some champions. And I mean, the one I was thinking, what should I just tell to this round this evening? The one thing that really made a difference, all of the players that I just named went full in. Because you can't just do such a transformation half-heartedly and say, I hedge my bets and I do a little bit of distribution system operator, but I keep a backdoor to do something else. The same is true for Iberdrola, the same is true for RWE. Full in. And I could now give you a speech of 5 minutes what we have done over the last 8 years to get to the point where we are and how beautiful it is for engineers. It's great. For an electrical engineer, there's nothing better than this industry right now. Yeah? But the point in the end is full in. And so if we are now talking about what can you do for Europe, I think 2 things. We as industry need to be fully committed, but then we need political support that is fully committed to make us successful. And there I'm actually lacking support, because we get lots of obligations, duties, targets, challenges and whatsoever. But then we ask, but what about the boundary conditions? What about helping us to make it happen? What about implementation? What about coordination? What about a different DG competition policy? We get, let me say, we could hope for faster delivery. Let me put it this way. So when we're talking about green champions, yes, we have an opportunity to build something, but we all need to up our game, and so does Brussels, and so does national politics.
Sounds familiar, Alexander?
Yeah, it sounds very familiar, and I was thinking when Leo mentioned, and you mentioned about the number of kilometers. Well, representing also actually not only green champions, but also global champions, the truck industry in Europe, actually with the number 5 global players, 3 are from Europe. number 1, 2, and I think number 4. And that is actually what we build and how we actually transport and connect the world. You connecting the world with your electrons, we are connecting the world to make sure everything what you need today, tomorrow is transported, or even if you recycled, that it is also transported. And talking numbers, as you were mentioning, 1.6 million kilometers, right? I was thinking we have 800,000 MAN trucks on the road in Europe, and they do an average 300 kilometers a day, so this is 2.4 million kilometers per day. So at least I beat you on that one. But that actually is also then the connection, and that is the connection that this green industry, and then speaking also for my colleagues of the truckers, we want to go green, and we all signed up actually and adhere to the 45% CO2 reduction. With the fleet 2030, we want to deliver on 45% CO2 reduction, which means roughly that 40 to 50% of all the trucks will be battery electric or hydrogen powered. And therefore, we need the right grid and the right connection, and we need also then the right green hydrogen available. That is actually how EU has orchestrated, and it's orchestrated through many regulations, the CO2 regulation, the emission trading system for transportation, it is the AFI regulation to have the infrastructure in place, and then you have all the players coming into play, and that first is the industry. But the industry has clear penalties if we don't meet. But then the other players, these are the member states, to implement all these regulations. There is no stick in the ground for the member states to drive this and to orchestrate that. And then I come to Leo and say, hey, I need to have the grid, I need to have the charging stations. He wants to do it, but then we have the regulation. Construction, grid providers, the fragmentation. This is where we have to stand up in Europe and orchestrate to make sure that from now until 2030, near up to half is zero emission trucks, and actually that by 2040, all the trucks we deliver in Europe, regardless what brand, actually is zero emission. It is possible. We have the trucks, we have the mega charging standard. We believe that the TCO parity with all these regulations can come into place, but we need to orchestrate the infrastructure, and that is where we have the bottleneck.
So the world has really changed. Fun fact, MAN was with Rudolf Diesel pioneering the first diesel back then, and now I hear you talking about electric vehicles and hydrogen, of course, and other solutions, but you're the market leader for electric city buses, I believe, and you build and deliver electric trucks and buses in some of the most diverse places in the world, from the Alp ski slopes to sweltering hot South Africa. Yeah. So I think you illustrate the transformation and the transition this industry is undergoing. And talking about going full in, I think that's reflected also by truck and bus manufacturers here. So how you wanted to come in, but how can we ensure this collaboration then works better if it's not really initiated by policymakers, because that seems to be lacking?
Yeah, but let's just clarify a little bit. What we are doing in our industry is we do so-called grid infrastructure development plans. They have different names in different countries. They're usually 10 to 15 years, usually 15 years forward-looking. And we are incorporating all the targets that we see and all the dynamics of the industry, because sometimes the targets are different from the dynamics we see. And then we are trying to calculate backwards what does that mean in terms of infrastructure for us. To be very clear what we're talking about, is like we are investing right now at above 2 times depreciation, and we are moving towards investing at 3 times depreciation, not for 1 year, 2 years, but for more than a decade. That's the plan so far. 3 times depreciation for more than 10 years. And that means that we are actually investing to the limits of our balance sheet, as you might imagine. No? Now, we are now factoring in infrastructure. Every player is doing that across Europe, but especially the large distribution player. If I speak for my own company, I will double my regulated asset base within 7 years. You know, it's not exactly true, but money-wise, it means I'm building a new grid in 7 years on top of the one that I already have. Obviously, parts of it is depreciated. But that is what we're talking about. Now, we can deliver a charging infrastructure for trucks, but that, to be very clear, is a bigger challenge for us. Because we are always talking about at least, let me say, 10 megawatts exactly. Plus minus, which in lots of the cases means that we need to reinforce the backbone system along the highway. Because 10 megawatts is nothing that we can do out of the standard medium voltage. And that means that if we are unlucky, we are looking at permit processes of 10 years. I mean, if I do something in high voltage, I'm happy if I can execute in less than 8. Yeah, but that is unacceptable from a timeline towards anything that you have. So clearly right now, the infrastructure is behind. Infrastructure is behind, is the bottleneck in basically everything right now. It's not only in trucks, also in renewable connections, you know, the solar developers will complain, the wind developers will complain, and I have been on the record in multiple times them saying we need more focus on infrastructure. The EU has now put forward a grid action plan, which is for me an indication that has been materialized, and now maybe the next Commission, therefore, gives us also a chance to jointly sort out these bottlenecks and be very clear we have a big interest not being the bottleneck. We want to be in front of the wave and not always behind the wave, because for us being behind the wave is expensive. For society, it's expensive. Bottlenecks are expensive. We don't want that. So we need to really up our game. But I see some signs of hope that this will materialize with the next Commission.
Within the next Commission, and that's ambitious if I...
But if it's not happening in the next Commission, sorry,
yeah.
Then, you know, it's like, then we are in the middle of, I just heard your timeline that you have from your regulation.
Yeah.
And then you have lost.
To 50% of trucks need to be electric by 2030, that's
so 6 years. But then that's obvious, the next Commission. It's the next Commission that's about implementation, and if we can't implement in the next Commission, the targets become unachievable, I realize.
Right, and then actually the penalties come to the industry.
To you.
Because when we don't deliver on this CO2 reduction, the penalties comes to us, and accordingly, those penalties we have to reserve for either to survive, or we also at the same time have to invest, as you do, 7 times your depreciation, the same trajectory we have when it comes to battery cell factories, when it comes to battery pack factories, when it comes to transition from the diesel motor basically to actually electromotors, which do 700 kilowatts on the truck. And also when we talk batteries, just to imagine, we have roughly between 500 and 800 kilowatt hours on the truck, and we charge that roughly once per day. So there, of course, we are a big fish for E.ON, because our customers, our truckers, they need a lot of power, but we have to make sure we orchestrate it. But therefore, we are here as ACEA to join together to make sure, together with the team of ACEA, we're actually moving forward the EU Commission. But you are fully right, we have to do it now. If we don't do it today, here and now, we are lost. And we are not only lost when it comes to Europe, we also lost when it comes to our global position. Because as you rightly pointed, US is driving it forward. There is a 7-year plan, both on actually the raw materials funding, on making the raw materials into batteries, securing that the OEMs have 7-year investments, and also our customers have 7 years investment period where they can actually write off through the schemes their trucks. That is how you can plan. But in Europe, we have all the regulations, all the member states, nice ideas, but no orchestration of implementation and driving it through. Yeah. And then driving through, our customers, they drive through all the member states. But nowadays, they have regulation here in Germany, they have a regulation in Austria, they cannot drive over the Alps during the nights, they cannot drive into France because they have a different regulation and different weight regulations, and all these challenges actually are obstructing the competitiveness of Europe.
And they all want to charge at the same time.
And we want to charge at the same time.
But the good news is that, you know, if I speak as the president of Euroelectric, the industry is adamant, the electricity industry, we want to make you successful. Right. We absolutely want you to be successful. For us, this is obviously an upside if an industry moves into our infrastructure.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit selfish, but we want you to be successful. And maybe Eurelectric and ACEA then need to pick up the baton and do what needs to be done if it's not done by somebody else. And maybe we need to orchestrate more, or at least take the lead. But certainly we have to do this in the next years, because it's an important time for Europe.
Right.
Excellent. Well, that seems to me like an excellent takeaway to switch from green to tech. We need to work together. Invitation accepted here on the stage. Thank you so much, Leonhard Birnbaum, and also Alexander Vlaskamp, for your contribution.
Thank you.